Good morning. What are you doing? How are you doing so far today? It's my absolute honor to introduce our keynote speaker this morning. So I'll do this in two ways. The first way, I'd like to tell you just a little bit about her, and then the second way, I'd like to tell you why she's here. Sometimes that isn't obviously apparent, so a little bit about her. Governor Mary Fallin grew up in Tecumseh, Oklahoma, which, as we all know, is kind of near Oklahoma City, just a little bit east of there. Graduated from Oklahoma State University, entered the private sector in hotel management, and then decided that it would be a good idea to run for public office, where she was elected to the Oklahoma House of Representatives, served there for a while, then ran for lieutenant governor, which in Oklahoma is an elected position, served as lieutenant governor, then ran for Congress, and she served 2 terms here in Congress, then ran for governor and is our current governor of the great state of Oklahoma. So that in of itself ought to tell you why it would be interesting to hear what she has to share with us. But wait, there's more. The reason she's here, one of the things that we're most proud of in Oklahoma is the governor has rose to the leadership position of the National Governors Association. And for those of us that aren't governors, what that actually means is that when you are chair of the National Governors Association, you get to pick a theme for the year, something that you want to champion for an entire year and make a national initiative. And the governor's initiative is, let's see if I get this right, America Works, Education and Training for Tomorrow's Job. Thank you, voice off the stage. So as my last act as the chair of this association, so she has gone around tirelessly throughout the entire country and talked about the workforce system. She could have picked any theme she wanted to, but she picked the workforce system. And as you're about to hear, she's a huge champion of the work that you do every single day. So without further ado, I invite you to join me in welcoming the governor of the great state of Oklahoma and the chair of the National Governors Association, the Honorable Mary Fallin.
Thank you so much. What a warm introduction. I appreciate that. Thank you, and I'm glad Steve was your national chair. After that, just joking, Steve. Steve, we appreciate you, and we appreciate all your leadership for this national organization. Of course, we're very proud. Where's my fellow Okies? Okies are, there we go. See, my Okies knew what my national initiative was. There we are. We're very proud of Steve and his leadership and our workforce investment people that are here today. And Steve not only is a great chair of your organization, but we're very proud of the work that he does with Boeing Corporation in our state and the wonderful jobs that they create for us. But Steve is also the local chair of our state workforce and investment board in Oklahoma. And so we're very proud of what he does in our great state. He's also a champion, as you may know, of aerospace and the defense industry in our state, which is very important to our economy, certainly one of our major employers in Oklahoma, one of our top economic sectors in our state. So we're very proud of Steve. Steve, thank you. Thank you for inviting me here, and thank you for inviting me to a group that has a topic that I actually care really a whole bunch about. It is my national initiative as national chair of the Governors Association, and we're very proud of that. And Ron Painter, I had a chance to meet Ron. What a great national board president that you have. We appreciate Ron and all that he does too. So I want to just tell you that I appreciate what all the workforce boards across America are doing, because your work is so vital, so important to America's economic security and frankly to America's national security. The time that you give, the effort that you put into this to meet regularly to talk about how we can grow our nation, grow our state's economies is very, very important. So I am very grateful for the work that you are doing here, and especially your national conference, because I'm one of those people that believes that when you get people together and you talk about common goals and ideas, you collaborate, you work together, you share best practices, that's how we learn from each other. We learn what works, we learn what doesn't work, and then we take those best practices and we put those things into action. In my state of Oklahoma, we have 9 local workforce investment boards, as well as our state board. And of course, they're partners, not only with each other, but they also partner with our K through 12 common education system, our higher education system, our career technology directors throughout our state. And it's very important that they all work together in collaboration. And I have to also tell you that they are equal voting members on our Workforce Investment Board, and that's very important too. Now, I even have my cabinet members that go to the Workforce Investment Board meetings. I have my Secretary of Commerce, my Secretary of Education, our Superintendent of Education, and then as governor, I go to the meetings when I can. I've gone to several of the meetings. I was just there a couple of months ago talking to them about our initiative about putting America back to work, education and training for tomorrow's jobs, because I do think it is a team effort, a team between the governor itself, all the different cabinet secretaries that are represented there, and certainly business and industry, and those that are out doing the training and the workforce, and those in our education systems. And it is essential, I think, that we have everybody at the table, have a seat at the table, as we work to make our education policy the best it can be, and our workforce policy one that serves the needs of our private sector. Because, frankly, our Workforce Investment Board members are the experts. They're the experts locally, they're the experts on labor market data. They're also the experts on what skills our employers need in the workforce, and that's what helps grow my state as Oklahoma. And as governor, I'll just tell you, since I'm the chair of the National Governors Association, I would suggest that all of your governors become involved in your workforce investment boards. I hope they are. Governors need to rely on the role of the boards, the workforce investment boards, but to also be an on-the-ground resource for labor market skills that are required in our state economies. And moving forward, it's going to take all of us working together, the private sector, lawmakers, our educators, even our media, to help deliver the kind of workforce improvements that we must have to keep our country moving forward. And it is my belief, and my true belief, that education for our children and for our workforce is probably the single most important issue that our nation needs to address as it comes to developing even a stronger, better individual prosperity, both for the person itself and certainly for our states and our economy, and certainly for our national economic and national security, national economic security. I think it's very, very important. Thank you, whoever that is back there. It's probably my staff. No, I see who it is. Thank you very much. So that's why, as the chair of the National Governors Association, I've devoted my time and as Steve said, my national chair's initiative on America Works, education and training for America's jobs, tomorrow's jobs. You know, many times we've heard about jobs going to India or going to China. We've talked about reshoring jobs back to America. This is one of the ways you do it, is that you provide the type of skill sets that are needed to keep our jobs here in America, and certainly to keep them from going overseas. Now, I'll tell you, I had a fun week this week. Just on Wednesday, I brought together our business community in Oklahoma from all across the whole state, both rural towns and our bigger cities. I brought together our common education folks, our superintendent of public instruction statewide. I brought together our chancellor of higher education, our director of our career technology schools, my superintendent of education. I brought local superintendents, college presidents, career technology directors, and as I mentioned, all kinds of organizations that are involved in education in general and the workforce. We had the Workforce Investment Board, we had the Governor's Business Roundtable. We all got together in one room. That doesn't always happen, because as you know, many times those different groups can be kind of particular and they don't want to talk to this group because somebody might get their money. You know how it is in government. Everybody's got to protect their own silos, but we brought everybody together and we talked about different demographics of the state of Oklahoma, where our state is positioned with our educational attainment level, the type of skill sets that are needed in our state. Our Department of Commerce has done an in-depth analysis of our top 5 wealth-generating industries, and then all the other jobs certainly that are important to Oklahoma, because my goal as a governor of my state is to grow the per capita income and grow the wealth of my state. And I'm happy to say that because of a lot of our efforts legislatively, we've been able to increase our per capita income of a family of 4 in our state since I've been in office since January 2011 by 6.1%, making us number 2 in the nation in per capita income growth. That's why it matters that everyone in this room meets with your public policy makers, those who are involved in workforce training, those who are involved in education, and certainly with the private sector to meet to determine what's the best path forward to grow a state's economy. And so I'm going to just tell you a couple examples about why this is important, and I'll use my state for an example. In Oklahoma's economy, like every other state, we have our top industries that I mentioned, our top wealth-generating type of industries that create the very best paying jobs in our state, and we got to keep up with that. One of our major industries in Oklahoma is the energy sector. We're very blessed to have a lot of natural resources and oil and gas, and that's been going on for well over a century in our state. But the energy industry today is so much different than what it was back at the very beginnings of our state. It's different than what it was just 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 30, 40, 50. I mean, you name the years, the energy sector is so different because of technology, because of innovation, because of processes. And you know, like in the energy sector today, when we used to, well, back in the old days, we used to have a lot of roughnecks that got out there and did a lot of manual labor, and certainly you still have those things. But today in the energy sector, we utilize hydraulic fracking, we utilize horizontal drilling, we utilize geospatial mapping of our state. We certainly have a lot of advancements in infrastructure and movement of supplies. We certainly utilize a lot of information technology services in that particular industry. And the energy sector, as I said, is so much different than what it was when it first became a major industry in our state back in the early, probably about 1930s, 1940s. And then you look at another industry in our state, agriculture. You know, we typically might have thought that agriculture, farming, and ranching would be kind of what we call a low-tech industry, a low-tech type career, but farmers in Oklahoma and across the country are utilizing breakthroughs in biosciences and technology, and they use that bioscience and technology to be able to determine what's the best kind of seed to be, in my state, drought resistant. You know, what's the best type of yield on a crop can you have with a certain type of seed or something that you might plant in the ground? And they even utilize weather technology to determine, you know, the best times to plant, the driest areas of the state, the wettest areas of the state. And now we're even talking about, across the United States, being able to utilize unmanned aerial systems to go out and check on agriculture, to check on whether it's grass fires or just to see how crops are performing. There's nothing low-tech today about our agriculture sector of farming or ranching in our United States. And then you take manufacturing, which all of our states have, and how those jobs have changed so dramatically. It used to be more of an assembly line type job. If you had a high school degree, or even if you didn't have a high school degree, typically in the past you could go get a job in manufacturing, an entry-level type job in manufacturing. But as I like to say, today's manufacturing jobs are not your grandfather's manufacturing company. It's very, very different. The technology that we utilize in manufacturing is not the same. It's not the same. It's pretty remarkable, all the different ways that we utilize technology. And so our workers today entering into the manufacturing sector have to have basic skills of math and most of the time, some computer type science skills. Certainly have to be able to read and write to be able to operate the type of machinery. It's not so much an assembly line as it used to be. Had the opportunity just last week to have one of our top companies in the world, Siemens Company, and their CEO, Eric Spiegel, in Oklahoma City. And he was talking about all the different sectors that they produce goods and products within Siemens. And he was saying that someone just coming out of high school without any type of workforce skills at all, just a plain old high school degree, he said can't get a job at Siemens. Just can't get a job. That's how much things have changed with technology. And so we know today that individuals need more education and need more skills for today's jobs. And businesses have to do a better job of developing a diverse, talented workforce. And states must make the targeted investments into workforce improvements if we're going to continue economic growth in our individual states and certainly around the nation. And to be able to compete as a nation, we must rapidly be able to adapt. Siemens also talked about how technology changes so quickly that the workforce skills needed change very rapidly too. Some type of product and delivery type service they might have been doing 5 years ago won't be something possibly that they need today. And so even employers have to be able to rapidly advance and change course with the use of technology and how they respond to our needs of our economy. So how we respond to this challenge will determine whether or not, frankly, our children will be able to do better than what we have done as parents. I think that's everyone's dream, is that as parents we want our children to do better than what we have done. And we want our children to be able to achieve the American dream. We want them to reach the middle class or beyond, hopefully. But it's going to be determined by how businesses and our states and our country react to these ever-changing needs with our skills in our nation. And it will be determined whether or not the United States of America continues to be the global international leader that we have always been in our state, in our nation. And so as the NGA chair, part of my goal is to bring our states together, bring our governors together, bring our policymakers together to look at the best practices in workforce development, in education itself, and to share that information across the nation so we can continue to help make America the strongest and most competitive nation in the whole world. And it's going to require, frankly, from the governors and from our states, that we make significant changes in our education systems, we make significant changes in our career technology schools, and even in how we allocate our resources for workforce development in our training programs. I read another statistic not too long ago that said that there are 3.5 million open jobs in the United States, 3.5 million open jobs in the United States, and there aren't enough skilled workers to take those jobs. And the labor market is experiencing what we call a widening middle skills gap, just a widening gap of not having the skills that they need between the type of jobs that employers have and the type of skills that our employees have also. So many times I find employers that will tell me, I just can't find the workers. I would hire more people, I would expand my company, but I can't find the skill sets that I need. And then I have some colleagues, some friends that will tell me, my children can't find a job. I just graduated from college, have a college degree, or I'm a working adult, I had a change in my career, and I can't find a job. Well, there are jobs out there. It's closing that gap so that we can help America be more competitive and help people find the type of work that they need. So, to put it differently, this initiative is about ensuring that a new generation of workers can secure the education that they need to be able to get the good paying jobs and be able to achieve that American dream. And that's what governors, and frankly, all of you in this room, all the Workforce Investment Board members, are uniquely positioned to be a part of building a stronger, better, educated, skilled workforce for our nation. And let me just tell you this, too. As a national chair, I was telling Steve a little while ago, Steve Hendrickson, that as a national chair, I've had the opportunity to meet with the president many times. And one of the things I've told him, I said, you know, states are what we call the laboratories of democracy. We're the places that innovate, we create, we change rapidly. Washington, D.C. moves slowly. And I don't know what the heck they're doing up there. I used to be a member of Congress, and I had a come to Jesus meeting, and I came home. I have great respect for my dear colleagues that are still there. But, you know, one of the things I frankly found frustrating about being in Congress is the lack of action, the lack of being able to get anything done. But we in our states, we know what our states need. We know what our businesses, our industries need. We know what our students need. We know what our returning working adults need. And so I've told the president several times as a national chair, I said, give the states more leeway. We have around 45 different workforce WIA funds, Workforce Investment Act funds, programs across our nation. Give us more authority to innovate, to create, to rapidly change for the types of programs and services that we need to deliver in our states, because you know best. You know best about what those programs are. And so what we find is that preparing America's 21st century workforce to keep pace and to stay competitive is an issue that not only calls for national attention, but frankly, it requires gubernatorial leadership. And it requires our governors across the nation to lead our states, working along with you to help change some of the things that we need to address today. And navigating today's pathways to prosperity is much more challenging than it was when, say, my parents were growing up over 50 years ago. And I'd like to just show you a chart here that demonstrates why this is so important. Here it is. The chart is labeled the new minimum, and this chart shows the percent of jobs in the economy and the education level needed to fill them approximately the last 50 years. So if you go over here to this side, it says 1965, if you can read that. 1965, in that blue section, 79% of our jobs in America needed a high school degree. 79% of our jobs, back when my parents were growing up, if you had a high school degree, you could probably make a good living wage, you could probably reach the middle class, you could probably achieve the American dream back in 1965. But if you go down to this end, 2013, still in that blue-purple category, only 35% of our jobs in America require a high school degree. And of that 35% of our jobs in America today that need a high school degree, 2/3 of those jobs will pay less than $25,000 a year. You're not going to reach the American dream on $25,000 or less a year. And then you fast forward this data and you look at all the other categories that are there. You see that in the red that you need some type of college degree or associate degree. It could be a vocational school training certificate. It could be an associate degree. And in the green sector, you see the number of bachelor's degrees, higher education institution degrees that are required, and how that number has changed from 1965 to 2013. That's our challenge. That's our challenge for our nation. It's our challenge for our states. It's our challenge to be the superpower of the world and to be able to compete in an international global economy. So it's very clear by looking at this chart that a high school diploma is no longer adequate to guarantee a good job and to be able to guarantee economic success. And over that period, we know that jobs demanded by an education beyond high school have more than tripled. So if you just look at the chart, it's more than tripled in the red and the green categories, the jobs that require something more than a high school degree. So based on these facts, it's very clear that we have to send a message to the rest of the nation that the new minimum for economic success to be able to enter into today's technology-driven, fast-paced, global 24/7, 365-day economy in our nation is that you must have something beyond a high school degree, whether it's a career technology certificate, whether it's a 2-year degree or 4-year degree or beyond, to be able to fill the type of skills gaps that we have in our workforce. But I hate to say it, but unfortunately we fall too short of that goal. And as such, as a nation, we're falling behind too. Here are a few other facts I thought I would share with you that I like to call as a chair the unpleasant truths. And here they are. We need to get more high school students to finish high school. Currently in America, only 78% of our high school students will even finish a high school degree. And you remember what types of incomes I said that those who even have a high school degree will make. But we need to get more high school students to graduate. And then when you look at the numbers for minorities and also those who are in low-income families, those numbers get even worse than the 78% that do graduate. In addition, too many students are not prepared to go to college, not prepared to go to a career technology school, and that's why we have such high remediation rates in reading and writing and math. Way too high remediation rates. And so what happens is that when a student starts either career technology school or even a college, and they have to take those basic remediation courses before they even start getting credit for the college classwork, and they're still paying that high tuition, and they start to school and they go a year, maybe 2 years, trying to catch up on those basic courses they didn't quite get out of high school. Then it takes them not 4 years, but 5 years and 6 years to graduate from college. And when it takes them longer to graduate from college, and many of those students drop out of college, and guess what they have? College debt, and no degree to go with that. Or when they do graduate from college, they have a lot of debt and they have that degree. And then the other flip side of the coin is that employers are having to wait longer until they get that college degree or that career technology certificate to go into the workforce. And so employers are saying, I need more skilled workers, but it's taking them longer to even get to the point to where they're employable because it's taking them longer to get to that education. So all these facts are contributing to a national trend that is very disturbing. And I want to show you another chart here. While we once led the world in student achievement, if you look at America's 15-year-old students in the year 2012, we rank 20th of the industrialized nations in reading. We rank 23rd in science, and 30th in math. And so here's the chart. Right down at the very bottom left is the United States. Right down at the very bottom. You see the circle right up above that? It says average. As the United States, we're below average. And all the other countries up above us, if you can see them, Canada, Finland, Netherlands, Switzerland, Japan, Korea, Hong Kong, Singapore, Shanghai. This is on the PISA testing. We're below average. Even Korea does better than we do. That's kind of scary. And then if you look at reading, it's math. If you look at reading, we're right about the average on reading, but look at all the other countries that are way ahead of us. And then you look at science. We're just tiny below average in that category, but you look at all the other countries and where we fall when it comes to science. So as you can see, we're not leading the world in those things at all. And if we want to lead the world economically, if we want to have what I frankly call national security, economic security, we have to do a much better job. And so, I don't know about you guys, but when my OU Sooners in Oklahoma, my football team, when they play average, we don't like that in Oklahoma. We like to win those championships, or the Thunder. We like to win those championships. And so why would we accept as a nation just being average? And we shouldn't. We shouldn't want to just be average. We want to have excellence in our country. We want to have the very best workforce, because if we don't have the very best workforce, we're not going to be able to retain those jobs and keep those jobs in our nation. Oklahoma needs to stand for, and the United States needs to stand for economic excellence. The bottom line is that our nation is falling behind on its competitive edge, and it's up to all of us in this room to build those new pathways to the middle class and to be able to make sure that our students receive more than a post-secondary, more than a high school education, but receive a post-secondary education. And in today's fast-paced, driven, technology-driven world, I think our pathways have to be relevant, they have to be flexible, and they have to also reflect our state's economic climates. And that's going to require significant improvements to our education system and, frankly, even to our workforce training programs. It's going to require a closer working relationship between our high schools, our colleges, our career technology programs, our workforce training providers, and but not least is our employers. Employers have to be engaged with all these different segments, and certainly our public policy makers, so that we can succeed, not only as states, but certainly as a nation. And most importantly, our efforts must meet the needs of our students. We all want our children to be able to find a good paying job, a relevant job in today's workforce so that they can succeed. So it's very clear that too few Americans are participating in post-secondary education, education beyond high school. Too few graduate from high school prepared to move on to a career program or even to a higher education program. And so our goals moving forward are very clear too. Let me just outline a couple things that I've been telling the governors and that I think we all have to work towards. First of all, we got to make sure that our students get the very best academic rigor and high standards in the classroom. In other words, when a student graduates as a senior in high school, they must be a senior high school educated student. And they must be prepared for the rigor to enter into a career technology program or enter into a higher education university. Secondly, we as public policy makers have to be more innovative, more creative in the opportunities of helping not only our students, but even helping our returning adults. Our returning adults, for some reason, that might have had a career change and needs to move into some other type of profession, to help them be able to find the career training they need, or even to go back and get a different type of degree so that they can get a good paying job. So let me make this point even more explicit by utilizing my home state of Oklahoma. And I talked earlier about the data that we've been collecting about our workforce and our academic levels and our educational attainment levels. And let me just show you some of the data that we have in our state. And I've got another chart here, if you wouldn't mind putting that up. All right, there it is. So the very bottom chart shows today's supply of educational attainment in Oklahoma since 2010. The blue, the purple is a high school degree or less in my current workforce. The red is some college or a vocational school associate degree. The green is the bachelor's degree, and the purple is some type of post-bachelor degree, something above a four-year college degree. Now, move on up and look at the type of jobs and the educational attainment level that I need between now and the year 2020, which, by the way, is just 6 years from now. It's just 6 years from now. And you look at the number of jobs that I need in the high school realm 23% of my jobs in Oklahoma are going to need a high school degree. 49% of my jobs are going to require some type of college or vocational career tech degree or an associate's degree. 24% will require some type of bachelor's degree, and then 4% something beyond a four-year college degree. So basically what this chart will show you is that I got some challenges ahead of me, and that's why I'm working on this. But basically what this chart will show you is that we have a skills gap. We have an educational attainment gap. And specifically, we know that between now and the year 2020, that 77% of my jobs in Oklahoma will require something more than a high school degree. 77%. But the basic fact is that 54% of my jobs in Oklahoma right now and my workers in the workforce have something more than a high school degree. So I have a 23-point gap. And I got to close that skills gap, that education attainment level gap, if I want to keep my jobs in my state, and frankly, if I want to attract more jobs to the state of Oklahoma. Now, I'll just tell you, this is my data for Oklahoma, but I can tell you that your states track along the same data. It's not unique to Oklahoma. It is pretty much about the same across the whole nation when you look at our skills gap, and many of those are what we call the middle skills gap, and that is something that requires some type of workforce skill. And we've always talked in our nation about how we got to get more people to go to college, and I'm all for that. But we also have a lot of skills and jobs in our nation that need what we call the middle skills. Those are the type of skills like welding, plumbing, computer science, LPNs, RN, some type of medical technician that needs to be in our economy. We call those the middle skills gap. So what do we do? What do we do about this? We actually have a plan, and four steps I'd like to show you now. We can pull up our next screen. First is that we have to have a vision. We have to articulate a vision to our home states to redefine what we call the new minimum, and that is something more than a high school degree to be able to reach the economic success that we want our citizens to reach. Secondly, we have to have data. We have to have data to set policy. We have to track our progress. We have to measure our success. One of my favorite sayings is that if you don't know where you're going, any road will get you there. And so we have to have data, we have to have a plan of action, we have to have a vision to know where we want to go, and then we have to build partnerships, and that's what all of you are about, is building those partnerships, getting the right people at the table to be able to make the decisions, to get the information that we need so that we can, fourthly, modify the use of our resources, our money. I was talking about the Workforce Investment Act funds that we have, being able to determine what is unique to our individual states, what programs we need, what careers we need to build, what educational levels, what skill sets we need, to be able to focus our incentives and our resources on those that will have, frankly, the biggest bang for the buck in our individual states. And if we don't, if we just keep doing things the way we've always done it, because that's just the way we've done it, and some people don't like change, it kind of reminds me of Einstein's definition of insanity, doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result. It's just not going to happen. And we got to get different results. So by framing these different four steps that we can take, framing the initiative, it's going to be up to our governors and the policymakers, our workforce investment boards, those involved in education and the private sector and businesses, to all join together so we can work across all sectors as a team. You're the team. You're the players on the field. And it's going to require leadership to do this. And if we don't, we're not going to, as I said, be able to be the superpower of the world. We're not going to be able to attract and keep the jobs that we want to have in America so that not only our children can do good, but so our adults can do good. And so that's why it's important that we've been trying to spread this message that there is a new minimum for educational attainment for our workforce so we can build a stronger, brighter future for not only our children, but for all Americans. So thank you so much for listening to my message. It's a great pleasure to be here today, and thank you for what you do in your individual states.
Would you take a couple questions?
As the governor's team was tattooing the name of her initiative to my eyelids, America Works, Education and Training for Tomorrow's Jobs, they also mentioned the governor would be willing to take a couple questions. So we're going to try to get a microphone to you if you have any questions. If we can't get a microphone to you, she also can interpret interpretive dance. So do it either way. But what questions do you have for Governor Fallin?
You ready for me?
Hi, I'm Sarah Steffes. I'm on the Central Oklahoma Workforce Investment Board. And my question is, do you know if anything's been done so far to get buy-in on the new minimum from high school students? Because I have a 17-year-old and a 13-year-old, and they aren't convinced that what they're learning in school is really going to be of any benefit.
That's a great question. I always jokingly tell my colleagues in Oklahoma, my husband and I have 6 children between us. And so I care deeply about education because I want to make sure that all my children get the education they need so they can get out of my household and support themselves. It's every parent's dream, isn't it? And I love my children, but I also want them to be able to take care of themselves, frankly. And so I think one of the things that we have to do, and one of the things we've been talking about, is we as states have to do a better job of reaching down to our younger folks, I think even younger, clear down to middle school, and certainly in high school, to start getting them to think about all the different exciting things they can do with their life. And there's some great examples of partnerships that have been developed between our high schools and our career technology schools and even our college higher education institutions where our students are dual tracking through the coursework, and that's one of the things that Steve and I have heard as we brought together the different states. We actually had the National Governors Association initiative, America Works in Oklahoma City on Thursday and Friday, and we had 30 states represented there. In the different states, we're sharing what they're doing in their states for best practices, in which I'll compile and give to all of our governors in July at our annual meeting. But we have some great examples of how there's some dual track education going on, innovative learning, certainly there's a lot of online learning, but refocusing, what are we offering even in our vocational schools to make sure that our courses are relevant to what's needed in the workforce itself. I gave a speech one time in Oklahoma and I said, you know, we got a great aerospace industry in our state. We certainly have a very strong energy sector, a lot of medical jobs, a lot of financial related type jobs. And I said, we gotta do a better job of looking at the coursework that we have, not only in our high schools, but in our career techs, in our higher education institution to fill the jobs that we have in our state. And we might want to think about not offering so many basket weaving courses when we need aerospace technicians. And a lady came up to me and she says, well, I got a great basket weaving company. I said, oh, sorry, lady, I wasn't talking about you. We're all for entrepreneurship. We all like that. But the point is that we have to take that data about the types of jobs that are in our states and our state's economy and move. Just like the Siemens company told me, we have to change constantly the type of technology we're utilizing in our workforce, but we have to have those skill sets within that company. And we also have to adapt as states. And so being able to show our children, I mean, I think most children would be interested in knowing that today's manufacturing uses a lot of robotics. I mean, what kid doesn't like a robot? I mean, what kid doesn't play on computers? I mean, that's the job we got to do, is reaching back down. As parents, frankly, we got to educate our parents too. And if that's, you know, some families, maybe the parents aren't engaged, and so helping our teachers and our career counselors also advise that student about the great opportunities that are there for them.
Good morning. Governor, what is the National Governors Association doing to, I think I'm having a technologically lap here, but what are we doing to pass new legislation, workforce legislation?
One of the things, as I mentioned earlier in talking to the president, is that we've asked the president to give the states more flexibility. There's been typically a 15% in the past year set aside for governors to be able to work with their local investment boards to be able to design innovative programs specific for that state. That had actually been dropped down to 5%. I think they're talking now possibly somewhere around 8.5% going back to the states to be able to have the leeway, to be able to be flexible with those funds, but to be able to have more flexibility so that as we're working in our individual states, we can meet our own unique needs, because not all states are the same. You know, some states are maybe more advanced in some type of workforce training where other states might not be quite there. Some, different states have different economic sectors that are important. They have different constitutions, different laws, different legislators. So giving us more flexibility with our workforce investment funds is something that we are constantly asking to do so that we can work with our investment boards to develop those unique programs.
Yes, Governor, can you hear me? People hear me? Okay. Oh, there you are. Mason Jackson, Fort Lauderdale, Florida. There's a lot of tension and even debate in Congress right now over the proper role of state and local levels in the design and control of programs. What is the proper role of the state and local boards in funding and the design of programs?
Well, as a former member of Congress and now a governor, I think the action's in the states. I think the states have the ability to move quicker, to be more innovative, to be more creative, to be able to shift with the demands of our economies and our businesses. And so I, once again, want to have more flexibility to our states. And many times we see the federal government come in with a one-size-fits-all program, and that's just not reality. And so we keep advocating for more flexibility. We call it flexible federalism. States having the right to be able to do the things. And now, on the other hand, we also know as a nation that we have to have some standards as far as being able to make sure that our nation is moving as a whole in the right direction, because we do compete, as I showed you on that one demographic. We compete with the Singapores and the Shanghais and all the other countries around the world, and so we want our nation as a whole to be very strong and prosperous, but we also think that the states have great ideas, and Congress many times gets so tied up in arguing and being very partisan and bickering that they frankly don't do a lot of things they need to be doing, and we don't have time to wait on them. We just want solutions to our problems today.
Governor Clyde McQueen, Kansas City, Missouri. As a governor who supports the Common Core, can you tell us in what way these Common Core standards were informed by the educational demands of employers?
As all of you probably, if you're reading the papers at all, you may know that Common Core has been one of those subjects that unfortunately has been controversial. The initial goal, and this was actually before I became the national chair of the Governor's Association, but back in the it came into 2010 was when it finally came into place. So back around 2008, 2009, governors got together with superintendents and businesses across the nation to talk about how as a nation we can be able to compete and keep our standards up. And there was a lot of talk back about how we live in such a mobile society that businesses such as Steve's moved employees to Oklahoma, which we're very grateful for, from some other states. And if some of his employees move, or even the military, when military moves around the United States, that if you move from one state to the next state and your son or daughter's in the 10th grade and you move to Oklahoma or California or whatever the state might be, that you want your child to still be in the 10th grade, not to be in the 9th grade or not to be in the 8th grade or whatever it might be. And so in today's mobile society, the governors had come together back in 2010 to lay some common groundwork that at this particular grade level, your child should be able to read these basic things, or this next grade level be able to do these basics of math, or this level should be able to have some critical thinking skills, to be able to read a book or a paragraph and be able to tell you what that meant, and to be able to analyze a problem and try to propose some solutions. So it was just some basic goals for children to be able to know at certain grade levels. So once again, we could have some common ground across the United States. Unfortunately, as politics go, there were some waivers for No Child Left Behind. There was some money tied to Race to the Top, which was another program that allocated some federal money. And then there were people who thought that the Common Core was tied nationally to Washington, to bureaucrats, and then it became political, unfortunately. So what a lot of governors have done is to say that, and I've done it in my state, Governor Brands has done it in Iowa, and several other governors have done it, is to issue an executive order saying that local curriculum, local school books, local control shall exist in these states, and that Washington shall not mandate a one-size-fits-all curriculum, school books in individual states. And frankly, that's not what it was intended to do anyway. It was intended just to say that at this grade, your child should be able to read at this level, do math at this level, do critical thinking skills. But unfortunately, politics has played into it. So I think you'll find the governors understand that it is important that we have high standards, that we have academic rigor, that we measure students' progress as they're going from grade to grade. We catch them before they fall behind, so they're ready to move on to the next level. I talked about remediation and making sure someone's 12th grade educated at the 12th grade degree, that we test and that we have accountability in the system. And as long as we can still do those things to make sure our children are learning the right skill sets at the right grade level, whatever we call it is fine, but we have to do it as a nation.
One more question. I have time for one more.
Thank you. Governor Fallin, Fred Villa from Alaska. We certainly welcome you back. I know you were in Alaska about 4 years ago. I'd like to recognize the effort that you put forward to have somebody signing and recognizing people with disabilities. What is the National Governors Association doing to be more inclusive and to identify that huge gap in our workforce where people who are disabled are underemployed?
Well, that's a great question, because we do have to take care of those who are disabled or developmentally disabled in our workforce, because they can offer great contributions to our workforce. And a lot of us have loved ones who have some type of disability. So the previous governor, to me, who was the national chair, was Governor Jack Markell of Delaware, and his chair's initiative was focusing on those with disabilities and employment for those. And so we actually spent a full year last year talking about the great examples of innovative programs across our nation, getting more private sector companies to recognize the tremendous values that those that are developmentally disabled or physically disabled can offer to the workforce, and highlighting those successful best practices. And I think it was a great service that Governor Markell did for our nation, and we actually published a whole book on how we could get better partnerships between not only our private sector workers, our private sector companies, and our workers, but the different types of programs that are out there working. But certainly it is a very important issue for our nation, and one that we should all support wholeheartedly. And I see you there, right close by.
Thank you, Governor. Hook 'em horns from Texas. Hey. Oklahoma is known as a right to work for less state. What's your position on that?
Oklahoma is known as a right to work state.
Right to work for less.
Well, if you heard me earlier, we are a right to work state. And actually, I will tell you that I do think that people should not be forced to pay, is my personal opinion, should not be forced to pay union dues as a condition of employment. And thank you. just a little bit of history. I actually took over the Senate back in the early 2000s, and we had a 3-day standoff in Oklahoma. And all I asked was that we allow the people of Oklahoma to be able to decide whether they want to be right to work or not. So I took over the Senate for 3 days. The senators on the opposite side of the aisle that did not support right to work left for 3 days. They were just gone. I just sat in the chair for 3 days, and we finally had a vote on right to work. We went to the vote of the people, and we did pass it in our state. But as I mentioned, let me just tell you a couple little facts about Oklahoma. As I mentioned, our per capita income, just since I've been in office, since 2011, has grown by 6.1% for a family of 4, making us number 2 in the nation, and job growth for our families that are working. And we're actually now one of the top 10 states in the nation in net migration of jobs moving to, and people moving to the state of Oklahoma. And if you'll remember your history back during the Grapes of Wrath era, back when we had a lot of Oklahomans that left during the Dust Bowl days and moved out west to California and Oregon and some of those other states. Now we are, frankly, one of the top 10 net migration of people moving back to our states. And our number one state where people are moving to Oklahoma, frankly, this is not a slam to them, it's just they're moving back home, but is Oklahoma, and Texas is one of our top states too.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you. My pleasure.
Thank you so much, Governor. And it's America Works Education and Training for Tomorrow's Jobs, which is the first thing out of my mouth all the time. Governor, thank you. Oftentimes people will ask what it is that we do in our state to try to get the attention of public policy officials on the workforce issue. Obviously, all we can try to do is keep up. That's pretty much all that we can do. So, yep, we got her, you don't. So there you go. She's amazing. Thank you, and it's an honor to serve with her. We look forward to seeing you all at today's luncheon, where our featured speakers are Secretary of Labor Thomas Pettis and AFL-CIO Treasurer Liz Schuler. And of course, tonight our awards ceremonies, topped off with a performance by everybody's favorite talking and singing heads, the Capitol Steps. Enjoy your morning.